of talk a bit about how that happens. But when it comes to semantic markup, so semantic markups, these are tags that are HTML tags that help define content relationships. We're going to delve a bit deeper into this if you're not familiar with semantic markups. But these are additional, like I mentioned, they're HTML tags that, again, are under the hood. You don't see these. It just helps crawlers better understand and parse through your text and the copy you have on your site. Uh, Performance engineering, so focusing on fast delivery, ensuring that your pages are not stalling out, that you're passing core web vitals, all of these more technical sides of your website performance. Security protocols. So it's kind of a standard, but if your website is not secure or following proper security protocols, and the standard obviously is just having an SSL certificate installed on your website, which is that little lock icon that you'd see in your web browser if your site is secured. That's pretty standard across the board. But when it comes to security, if you're not following proper security protocols, you're going to hurt yourself from a technical SEO perspective and performance perspective. And then finally, we can't have this presentation without talking about AI. It's a big part of Google search with the implementation of Gemini within Google search and their AI prompts that I'm sure we've all seen. Whenever someone does a Google search, you'll see that AI response at times, depending on what your search query is. So it's important to be mindful of these updates and these changes and preparing your website to be easily parsed and understood by AI and LLMs. So that your content can potentially be shown in these results, whether it's through ChatGPT or Gemini, so on and so forth. So some advanced tools that I recommend, again, there's a number of tools out there. I always say when I talk about tools, so these are just ones to evaluate and look at. This is by far not the end all be all of tools out there. There's numerous companies that have these tools and different features. But the ones to call out, hopefully, if you're in this call today, you've already invested in a tool like SEMrush or Ahrefs. That's like the bare minimum basics for SEO for your website. Like that's kind of like beginner level. You need to have one of these tools set up and using them for your website if you're wanting to actually implement SEO and organic growth as part of your marketing strategy. Uh, but using these tools, Screaming Frog, Ahrefs, SEMrush, you can analyze things like the way your DOM is rendered. So basically, what text is being shown, what's not being shown, what's being loaded by JavaScript, what's not, and also auditing just your SEO in general at scale. These tools simplify it, help you track performance, and just really speed up the process. Sitebulb, it's a tool that can help you visualize crawl trees. So understanding, as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to crawl optimization, understanding when pages are being seen in the crawl web. So I always like to say with crawlers, think of it as a spider web. So once a crawler comes to your website, they're going to come to the first page. They're going to find other internal links. So say there's 3 links on the page. They're going to go those 3 directions. Whatever internal links are on those 3 pages, they're going to continue going that direction. So think of it as like really a web. All your links are creating this crawling web. That's important to have a handle on and understand which pages are being seen by crawlers and when. Obviously, most important ones seen closer to the top and not linked deeply. But again, going back to this tool, Sitebulb is a tool that can help you understand your crawl trees, identify deep linked content that's harder to find by crawlers, and potentially orphaned content. Which orphaned content, if you're not familiar with that term, is content on your website that's not linked internally, or is basically not being seen by crawlers. Jet Octopus, another great tool to simulate bot behavior. So again, this can be a tool to help you understand what are crawlers actually seeing when they come to my site and are crawling it, because that's obviously what's going to matter when it comes to your rankings and what's being shown in Google. And then SEO Radar. So SEO Radar can help detect real-time code and content changes that will affect your rankings. So again, these are just a handful of tools. definitely evaluate if you're looking for new tools for your tool set and your tech stack. But these are ones I definitely would recommend if you're looking to analyze or address any of these topics. So moving into crawl optimization. So we talked a bit about this, but there are a number of techniques that to consider when you're thinking about optimizing your crawl. So first off is dynamic rendering. So uh, first off, you want to make sure that understanding basically what's being shown on what device. So for example, what's being shown on a mobile device, what's being shown on a desktop device. I actually had a session that I led yesterday more on beginner topics, but sometimes people are not aware of this. When it comes to Google crawlers, they actually prioritize your mobile version over your desktop. So it's mobile first indexing that's done by Google. The reason being is the majority of searches are done on mobile. So that being said, whenever Google's determining what to rank and how to rank within search results, they're prioritizing the mobile experience. Um, which we'll talk a bit about mobile optimization in a bit, but it's important to understand what versions of the site are being shown depending on what device someone is on. Another technique to look at is your robots.txt, xrobots tag, and HTTP status codes. So again, if you're not familiar with these are files and within your website that help crawlers understand what to crawl, what not to crawl, what to index, what not to index. So for example, in your robots.txt file, this is where you're going to mark pages as index or no index so that crawlers know what they should be looking at, what they shouldn't be looking at. And similar across xrobots tag and HTTP status codes. For example, things that you might want to exclude from crawling to uh, manage your crawling threshold would be like maybe blocking like internal pages, admin panels, duplicate content that maybe potentially you have, so on and so forth. Um, Additionally, validate through Googlebot visits via reverse DNS and IP match. So what this means is understanding which bots are coming to your site, which are Google and which ones are not Google. So uh, bots are constantly coming across your site if you're aware of it or not, and they can hurt your server and they can hurt your load times and your website performance. So it's important to know which bots that are coming to your website uh, are actual Google bots and which ones are not to prevent them from overloading your server. You can also block those bots as well, so that they're not overloading your server. And obviously, they're not important. The ones that are important are the Google bots, which are determining your performance in Google search results. Looking at SSR versus CSR. So SSR and CSR. So SSR stands for server side rendering. CSR stands for client side rendering. As a general rule of thumb, server side rendering is better for SEO and crawlers because the content is immediately visible. So what the difference is, and this stuff can happen in milliseconds, so you probably wouldn't see this to like the naked eye, but the difference is versus your website being rendered on the client side, which means when someone comes to your website, the site is being rendered at that point in time. When you render on the server side, it is actually being rendered on the server. And when someone comes to the website, it's being shown already. It's being shown already rendered versus having to render when someone visits. So as I'm sure you can imagine, when a crawler comes to your website, if there's any sort of delays in the rendering, if it's client-side rendering, they're not going to see that content. They're not going to see the content that's if there's any sort of delays in the client since it's being rendered on the client side. How to combat that is obviously moving over to server-side rendering. That way, whenever a crawler comes to your website, everything is rendered all at one time and they can see all of your content. So it's a general rule of thumb that you should always use SSR, especially for again, this is a bit more technical. If you're a small business or have a small audience, this maybe is not something that is top of mind for you. But if you're really on the larger side of a business and you're really looking to take that advanced step in improving your SEO performance, you should look at moving over to server side rendering. Um, and then also simulate crawl queues to identify rendering or priority issues. Uh, and so what this means is that simulating crawl queues will show you and mimic how search engines crawl your website. So somewhat of the tool I mentioned earlier, which is uh, Sitebulb. This is a tool, for example, that can help you uh, visualize and understand your crawling and what content's deeply linked, which one is orphan content, or what is if you have any orphan content. So going back here, having a tool like that can help you simulate these crawls to identify if there are any rendering issues or priority issues. Um, so again, it's very powerful to invest in the proper tools if you're actually wanting to go a bit deeper and a bit more advanced from a technical side of things, uh, because it's going to allow you to do these types of things and understand if there's rendering issues. So looking at your crawl budget. So when it comes to crawling, obviously when a bot comes to your site, they're not going to just crawl indefinitely on your website. Like that's just not how it works. There's not enough time in the day for them for technology to do that on a regular basis. The way that it works is they're going to crawl to a certain point to where they deem that the information's been seen and that they've crawled enough of the website. So that being said, it's important to understand how to manage your crawl budget to ensure that the pages that you want to be seen by Google and be indexed are seen. You can use regex or regular expressions if you're familiar with regular expressions or parameters in robots.txt to block crawl traps. So for example, if you have like a cycle of internal links where say like I mentioned earlier, it's like a spider web. So say that a crawler goes to a page, they see an internal link, they are taken to that internal link, and that link goes back to the original page. You've just created a loop for your crawling, which is going to reduce the amount of actual pages and new pages that a crawler can see. So it's important to think about these types of things to ensure that you're not wasting crawl budget. And that the content that's the most important is getting indexed. Look at your pages by crawl date, backlinks, and conversion relevance. So what this means from a strategic perspective is understanding which pages are actually having the biggest impact, which ones are being crawled most often, which ones have the most backlinks, and which ones are actually potentially driving conversions for your business. Obviously, if you have a lot of content, you can't just go about optimizing every single page on your website, every piece of content. This will help these types of metrics to look at are going to help you understand what to optimize and what to focus on when you have because you don't have enough time to go through and optimize everything. And another thing that you can do to manage your crawl budget is when it comes to delivery throttles during high demand periods. So some examples of this would be, say, for example, you're an e-commerce site uh, and you have Black Friday sale, or you have some sort of sale coming up. You're going to be generating a lot of traffic to your website. Your servers are overloaded. If you use a CDN is a content delivery network to throttle traffic from bots or low priority low priority sources. So you can ensure that you maintain your servers and keep things from going under or crashing. So this is more like a time sensitive issue. Like if you had you expected a large amount of traffic to come to your website with like a sale or a new product launch or something along those lines. This is a technique that can help prevent bots for a temporary period of time to make sure that your servers are not overloaded with actual customers who are coming to your website. Looking at mobile optimization. So as I mentioned earlier, Google prioritizes websites that are optimized for mobile in Google search, and it's a mobile first indexing method. So pages are being indexed based on how you're performing on mobile. Uh, when it comes to how to optimize for mobile at the code level, so going like really under the hood looking at things, um, you want to potentially detect and serve resources depending on the user agent. So what this means is if you have images on your desk on a desktop version of your website or video on the desktop version of your website, um, potentially look at introducing smaller images or simpler layouts or removing video or things along that nature that are potentially slowing down your performance on mobile and saving those for desktop. Again, this is these types of things can help speed up your performance and speed up your site performance for mobile. And so if you're having any sort of issues from a mobile performance perspective, maybe you're failing core web vitals, maybe you're having some loading time issues, whatever the case may be, one technique is looking at delivering these smaller images or removing larger files such as video, etc., from the mobile version. Um, Take into consideration with those changes, like I said earlier, Google is indexing based off of mobile. So if you have anything on mobile that uh, that is not shown on desktop or vice versa, it's not being seen by Google crawlers. So just keep that in mind and consideration. Another technique is lazy loading. If you're not familiar with lazy loading for images or video, basically what that means is you will only load the image or the video or etc. whenever someone crawls to it versus it being loaded on the page load. So for example of why this is important, especially for images that are under the fold. So if you're familiar with the term above the fold, under the fold, above the fold is what's shown on your screen or on your desktop or your mobile phone without having to scroll. That's the above the fold section. The under the fold section is anything that you have to get to by scrolling on your desktop or your mobile phone. So by lazy loading images and video that are under the fold, that's going to ensure that you're optimizing for site speed and performance. If a page has, say, 50 images on it, but you're not lazy loading anything that's underneath the fold, you're going to slow down your website because it's trying to render all 50 images at one time on the initial page load. With lazy loading, if you're only uh, if you're lazy loading everything above the under the fold and not lazy loading things above the fold, that means that whenever the website is rendered and loaded, it's only you're telling the website only show the content that's most pertinent in that initial section and load that immediately, and then everything else load it as someone scrolls. So you may think, oh, what does this look like from a user experience perspective? It happens within milliseconds, so you couldn't even see the difference from the naked eye. Um, as someone's scrolling, they're not going to really tell the difference of if a page is lazy, if an image is lazy loaded or not. These things happen within milliseconds when it comes to loading. Another technique is CSS properties like content visibility. So content visibility is a CSS property that can allow browsers to skip rendering certain elements that you don't want to have visible yet. Again, similar to lazy loading images, this can speed up your paint and layout times and improve your overall site performance in your core web vitals, which are most important when it comes to the technical side of things. And then ensuring that identical structured data is available on mobile as well as the desktop. So this is typically always the case, but just got to call this out. When it comes to structured data and SERPs or rich results, you want to ensure that you're using the same structured data across desktop and mobile so that there's continuity there to ensure that you're not sending any sort of mixed signals with SERPs to ensure that you're getting rich results like FAQ shown, stars, reviews, whatever the case may be. Looking at internal linking. So some internal linking strategies to think about how to link things internally, which ties into how things are being crawled on your website. Create clusters of thematically related content or topic hubs. So if you have a library of content making sure that the content that's all related, excuse me, is linking internally to one another to create that hub. Um, that's one route of going about when it comes to internal linking strategy. Track anchor variation. So your anchor text that's being used for internal links, uh, have some variation in that anchor text. You don't want to just have the same anchor text throughout. That is a form of over optimization for internal linking. It actually is better to have some sort of variety that relates to the topic, obviously, and relates to the piece that you're linking to or the page that you're linking to. But again, helps prevent that over optimization. Um, think looking at link depth again. So understanding how far down a page is linked internally. So is it taking a crawler 7 clicks to get to that page? Is it taking the crawler 2 clicks to get to that page? Uh, and then looking at those paths and understanding how should I reprioritize my internal links? Is there a page that I actually want to be shown further up into crawlers and being seen more often by crawlers? It's taking a crawler 7 clicks to get to it. You want to look at your strategy to look at bringing that further up and making it more like 2 clicks, depending on what the page is, obviously. But understanding the link depth for the different pages you have on your website and understanding where they fall in terms of priority. And then adding schema markup, and such as breadcrumbs and internal navigation to reinforce your structure. So, for example, like if you're not familiar with breadcrumbs, you probably have seen these or interacted with these. These are quite popular, especially with e-commerce sites. But if you see your navigation path that you follow to get to a certain page at the top of the page, maybe your navigation path was outerwear, or men's clothing, outerwear, jackets. And you'll see that breadcrumb or those links followed along from the path you followed to the page you're at currently. That's breadcrumbs. So this is another strategy that can help and reinforce your internal links. And again, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is help crawlers and bots understand your content and parse it more easily and better understand it. So these are techniques to help with that. Looking at AI readability and optimization. So, uh, like I said earlier, we can't have this presentation and not chat about AI because it's such a big player in the space right now and really kind of changing SEO and organic performance for a lot of brands. When it comes to optimizing for AI and LLMs, I get this question so often. Uh, First off, if you haven't done this already for your website, you need to implement an LLMS.txt file. It's very similar to robots.txt file, if you're familiar with those. This is actually a new development that's really been launched like in the past 6 months, where similar to robots.txt file, you're blatantly telling crawlers what to crawl and what not to crawl. It's going to, for the most part, follow your robots.txt file unless you have any sort of, outlying, and maybe you're a company that has any sort of outlying circumstances where there's maybe pages you don't want to be seen by AI for whatever reason. You can actually put those specifically in your LLMS.txt file versus your robots.txt file. So again, if you don't have this already, after today, look at implementing this in your root directory for your website, because this is something that's currently impacting websites when it comes to AI performance, and appearing in Gemini, ChatGPT, etc. Mentioned this earlier, but using semantic HTML elements. So semantic HTML elements, some examples here are aside tags, summary tags. These tags are being used by AI to better understand your content on your website. These are not, if you've done any sort of HTML, maybe you potentially never heard of these before. These are a bit more, again, technical in nature, and they're beyond just like having an H1 heading or what have you. And to speak a bit of how these function, when it comes to like a summary, you could have like a paragraph tag that is also a summary tag. So there is overlap there. if you're familiar with either of the things I just said. So these aren't just these actually overlap with other elements that you're maybe already familiar with. An example of like an aside tag. An aside tag would be used for like if you had content in a sidebar, like or in a uh, maybe you have categories of your content, like of your blogs on the right hand side, or maybe you have a search bar on the right hand side, or whatever the case may be. That information would be marked as a side, for example. So there's a number of different semantics tags that you can use, and if you aren't familiar with them, I'd recommend just doing a quick deep dive into what all the different semantic HTML elements are that you can utilize. But the main thing is look at implementing these. If you haven't already, implement these on your website to, again, help AI crawlers better parse and understand your content. Use embeddings for internal search or navigation. So this is, again, a bit more technical, but stay with me here. So when it comes to embeddings, these are vector-based representations of your content. So this is under the hood, nothing visually that you're actually seeing. These are most pertinent for when you're doing internal searches. So if you have like an internal search functionality, maybe you have a search bar on your website, or you have someone can search through your content, they can search through your products, so on and so forth. That is internal search for your website. So by using vector-based representation on your content and having these embedded on the page, you can create relationships between different products or different content. So for example, you can use embeddings to say relate a black outerwear jacket to black ski pants, for example. Like it's a very random example, but basically you can use these types of embeddings to relate your content to one another. We don't have enough time to do a deep dive into technically how to do this, but again, take this information, do it if you're haven't done this already, you're familiar, you're curious about it, do a deeper dive, post this, and understand how to actually implement this on your website. And then finally, prepare for multimodal SEO. So when it comes to optimizing your website for AI, and this is kind of just across the board, but just calling it out here, uh, I always like to say crawlers are text focused. All these searches, whether it be ChatGPT, Gemini, uh, Google, Bing, whatever the case may be, these are text-based searches that we're trying to rank for. So that being said, we need to make sure, especially when it comes to like things like images, we have alt text. We have alt text that's describing our images so that if a crawler comes to our site, they can understand what the uh, image is about. One thing I always say with video too, something that's sometimes overlooked, is not having a transcript with your video. Again, a crawler is not going to be able to go through, if you have video content on your website, they're not going to be able to go through and parse through the actual audio of a video. As important for if you're trying to use video as part of your strategy and your organic growth strategy, make sure you're including transcripts, because that's going to make a difference in terms of uh, not only just AI crawlers, but just crawlers in general being able to parse and understand the content and determine if how to rank the content. Um, you can't just have a video on a page and expect a crawler to be able to parse through that and understand what it's about. So looking at ongoing maintenance for SEO. So when it comes to a framework for auditing your website from a technical perspective, we've talked about a couple of these things earlier, but run crawls that simulate different types of bots and devices. So, you know, uh, you can't just crawl your site on desktop with a tool and then say, "Oh, we're good. Everything passed. Our pages were rendered. Everything was crawled correctly, so on and so forth." It's important to test it across multiple devices, when not only just desktop and mobile, going a bit deeper to even like the type of mobile phone. Is it an iPhone? Is it a Android Galaxy? Is it whatever the case may be? Um, Running these crawls and simulating them with different bots and devices. Again, it's a holistic view of of your website that determines your ranking. So for example, if you're performing well on one device but not performing well on another device, that can hurt your performance from an SEO perspective. And you're gonna be asking, how do I go about doing this? Invest in one of those tools that we talked about previously. These types of tools can help you streamline this type of testing and run these crawls across different bots and devices. Um, Use log correlation to see if high value pages are being indexed. So I mentioned this earlier, but when it comes to your crawl logs, understanding, are my most pertinent pages being crawled being crawled often? How far are they being crawled in terms of the depth of my crawl log? Is it taking someone 7 clicks to get there? Is it taking them 2? And if it's depending on the situation, if it's important, we need to move that up. It needs to be crawled more often. It needs to, not take 7 clicks to get to it. So auditing these types of things. Understanding, which I spoke about earlier, understanding what content is being generated by JavaScript. For example, like I mentioned earlier, it's very common if you have a website such as like a Shopify site or a site that utilizes JavaScript plugins, like a WordPress site, what have you, for content to be rendered post JavaScript running. And as I said earlier, if it's being rendered after JavaScript's being run, it's not being seen by crawlers. So understanding what content falls in that bucket, and if it does fall in that bucket, understanding first off if we need to move that content to somewhere else. There's also a technique which again, I'd say take this information and go a bit deeper with it post our conversation. But you can also provide HTML snapshots of your website to crawlers, so that those pages are being crawled versus the actual website. By using HTML snapshots, you're actually giving a standalone HTML version of the page that is not changing with JavaScript, that crawlers would then use and analyze to determine your site rankings and your SEO performance. So that being said, that's one technique to go about it, but it's important to really, as you're auditing these things, just getting an understanding of what's running, uh, what's being shown post JavaScript running. And then also testing core web vitals. Obviously, if you're in this presentation, you're hopefully already familiar with core web vitals, but these are some of the most important determining factors when it comes to your technical performance. You want to make sure that you're passing all core web vitals across all devices, so desktop, mobile, and it's important to make sure that you're checking these reports regularly, understanding if you're passing cumulative layout shift. Is your largest contentful paint passing? All these metrics that are being measured by Google, it's most important to audit these things and ensure that they're passing and being tracked regularly. And then just like a framework that you can take with you to understand like what an ideal schedule would be for ongoing SEO maintenance. Again, when it comes to the technical side of SEO, you may be thinking, okay, I want to handle the technical side of things, but I also want to actually start creating content. My focus is on creating, X number of posts, creating video, whatever the case may be. So this is one of those things that, we have to prioritize what we have time for when it comes to SEO. So when you're thinking about things that are most important from a technical perspective, after you're doing like an audit of things currently on a daily basis, and this is more of just like setting an alert if something comes up, reviewing 5xx errors, spike detection, so things where maybe you're just getting an alert if your servers if you are being overrun with high traffic, hurting your performance, those types of things. This is more of just like a emergency type thing, making sure that, your servers are functioning properly from a technical side of things. On a weekly basis, just potentially checking your core web vitals or bi-weekly to understand that how are we performing? Are we passing all of our web vitals? You can also within Google Search Console look at your crawl logs, understand if there's any sort of issues, any sort of crawling or indexing errors. So I'd say a weekly, bi-weekly cadence of just like checking these things and making sure there's no issues. Um, when it comes to like monthly basis, being reviewing your schema across templates. So if you if you're using a tool like again WordPress or Webflow or something like that, where you have a CMS or a content management system in place, ideally you're going to uh, have like template pages that blog content or whatever the content is being replicated across these different template pages. Just going through on a monthly basis and reviewing your schema to ensure there's no updates or changes. Sometimes schema is deprecated, sometimes there's updates. So it's important just to have a handle and make sure that the schema you have implemented is uh, working properly across your templated pages. Um, on a quarterly basis, recommend running a full site audit, maybe aligning with your development team. Obviously, some of the stuff we talked about today is a bit more technical in nature. Maybe it's a bit out of your skill set. Maybe you're not the actual engineer. Some of this stuff needs to be done by someone else on your team. But I'd say from the technical side of SEO, it is important to have alignment with your development team and your SEO or your marketing team to ensure that the work that the items that need to be taken care of from a technical perspective are aligning with your dev team. Those things are being maintained and being updated, so on and so forth. And then semi-annually, updating your disallow rules, sitemap structure, any sort of AI accessibility policies. So this relates to like your robots.txt files, your LLMS.txt files, understanding what pages are being indexed, what not being indexed. But again, this is just a rough schedule of like, if you're thinking about, hey, where do I find the time in the day to actually think about these things and actually maintain them? Uh, this can kind of help simplify it and kind of just make it as a quick checklist for you um, for ongoing maintenance of the technical side of your website. Um, that's all I had for today. I know this is a bit more technical, so I'm happy to answer any questions that we have and go a bit deeper. Again, I believe the session was recorded and I believe it'll be sent out post this. So any of these topics we talked about that maybe want to go a bit deeper, want to understand how to implement them, definitely recommend doing that research and understanding what is needed for your website, what's not needed. Um, Again, what's needed for a technology company and a software company's website is not going to be the same as what's needed for an e-commerce site. So just understanding where you fall in there and understanding what needs to be done for your website. But yeah, that's all I had.
Fantastic, Ryan. Thank you again so much for your time today. I know we had our session yesterday and looking excited for a deeper dive today on more technical side. Much appreciated. Highly recommend you all to book a call with Rex Marketing and CX. They really know their stuff around SEO. If you have any questions, feel free to either drop it into the chat or you can unmute and ask your question directly. We got
Cool.
some.
And if there's no questions, happy to, if you have anything that comes up post this, feel free to book a call. Happy to chat all things SEO post this. So yeah, happy to chat about anything here.
Fantastic, Ryan. You're getting some kudos in the chat for yesterday and today's workshop. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for participating in today's workshop. Please feel free to join us for future Start Out events. And Ryan, thank you again for your time.
cool. Awesome. Thank you all.
Bye all.